They would have a couple of commands to help them get moving along. The first command that I'm going to give you is préparer. So I want everybody to grab their paddle like this and have it just sitting like this. So that's just the ready position, so ready to get paddling. The second command is en avant, which means paddle forward. So that's when you dig your blade into the water and we start moving. Another one is reculer. So that means you're just going to plant your blade in the water like this and do basically a backstroke. So hold water. And then finally, arrêter, which just means stop and get into the préparé position. So a little bit on the positions of the boat. Meg will be sitting up here in the front, in the bow of the boat, and her position is known as the avant. And I will be sitting in the very back, and the very back of the boat is called the gouvernail. And I'm the one who's going to be giving the commands and all that good stuff. And everybody in the middle, which is all of you guys, are les milieux. You guys are the muscle. This boat here in particular is a Montreal boat. And Montreal boats were usually the longer boats. They were 36 to 40 feet. And also known as the Canoe de Maître. And it could carry up to 4 tons of cargo, so like fur and food and like gear and all the equipment that they would need when they were going on their trips. And then there was another kind of boat that they would take out, and it was the Canoe du Nord, or North canoes, and they were shorter in length. This one's 36 feet, and the other ones were around 25 feet, and they could carry about 1.5 tons of furs and cargo and whatever they would need. The boats were usually made of white birch, and they would use spruce gum mixed with animal fat as the glue. And that also kind of acts as a propellant for the boat, because what the spruce gum does when it touches water is it spreads out and it pushes the boat a little bit. The voyageurs would always start their day before the sun would even be in the sky. They would wake up hours before sunrise to start paddling on calm water, especially when they were in Lake Superior. Now they would paddle for up to 12 to 15 hours a day, and they would do a stroke per second while they were paddling. So this would allow them to do up to 12 to 13 kilometers an hour, which is extremely fast considering the rate that we're moving at right now. And the boats that they would have, like this one, called the Montreal Boat, could carry up to 4 tons of equipment and gear and fur. So they would load up with all the fur and the gear, and then they would stop off at a trading post, and that's where they would have a rest for a few days. The way that they would measure time throughout the day is by how many smoke breaks they had, and they would smoke out of these clay pipes. And they would smoke their tobacco, and then the pipes would get shorter and shorter because they would get filled with tar, and they would break them, and then eventually they would just end up thrown into the water, which is not something that we like to do these days. But back then, I don't think they knew any different. Always hire people who couldn't swim. It's because if you can't swim, you're far less likely to be aggressive and try and tip the boat, maybe. So,
or jump out of the
boat. Or jump out and try and swim away. So they would hire people that can't swim just because.
And typically voyageurs were short and stocky and very strong.
So usually the voyageur that they hired would be from 5 feet tall to 5.5 feet tall. They wouldn't hire very big people. They would have lots and lots of upper body strength, but not too much in the legs, even though they did lots of portaging, because there wasn't much room for people with long legs in a boat that's full of fur and gear. They would stick to big rivers such as the Montreal River. What the Queen did was she gave them rights to every river leading into Hudson's Bay. So a lot of the rivers they would use like that, like Mississippi and stuff like that. But they mostly stuck to the rivers. And then once they got down along Superior, they would travel the coastline.
The natives were mostly included as guides on the trips, particularly women, and they would show them the best route to take, and then also give them hints on plants and animals to use for whatever they needed, medicine and food.
The routes that the voyageurs used to take, the Ojibwe had a word for it called, it was nostalgian, and it translates into the ways. So these are routes that have been existing for years, like thousands of years before any Europeans ever came over. So what better people to guide them along the ways than the native people?
There's not really any other indication of exactly what they might have done, but there's writing of women always appearing in the boats. So they've speculated that the women would do sort of lighter tasks. They wouldn't help portage the boats, but they would, help set up camp, do cooking, repair moccasins, sometimes help paddle, pick berries, all sorts of different tasks along the way.
So the voyageur always liked to set up camp around the early afternoon, which is why they would start paddling so early in the morning. And this is where they would have native women help them out. They would hire native women as guides and as interpreters to help interpret the land, because they knew better than any other people that the native people had such a spiritual connection with the land that it made it a lot easier. So the native women would help them set up camp, and they would help them cook food, and they would also help them repair any clothes and whatnot that they needed to be done. Arrêtez! Préparez un saluté! 1, 2, 3.